every board of directors is like, we want to be above average in terms of how much we're paying our CEO. And if everyone wants to be above average, then every time there's a new CEO pay round, the median pay for CEOs just goes up and up and up.
Breaking. The Wall Street Journal is reporting, citing unnamed sources, that the FTC is looking into whether ISS and Glass Lewis, the shareholder proxy firms, are breaking antitrust law over how they advise clients on stuff.
Elizabeth, before I tell you what the correct opinion is on 50-year mortgages, I want to know what your opinion is.
Well, first of all, thank you in advance for explaining to me what the correct opinion is.
Hello, and welcome to Slate Money, your guide to the business and finance news of the week. I'm Felix Salmon of Bloomberg. I'm here with Elizabeth Spiers of the New York Times.
Hello.
I'm here with Emily Peck of Axios.
Hello, hello.
And we are going to talk about 50-year mortgages this week, whether they are a good idea or whether Congress is onto something when they say they are a bad idea. We are going to talk about ISS and Glass Lewis and shareholder proxy advisory firms and whether they are a good thing or a bad thing. We are going to talk about bags of cash.
Good thing or bad thing?
Good thing or bad thing? If you're pro bags of cash or anti bags of cash, stay tuned to find out whether we agree with you. We have a Slate Plus segment on an angle apropos the Jeffrey Epstein emails that you might not have really gone into given a lot of thought to, but I will say that Cher appears somewhere in the segment.
But not in the emails as far as we know.
But not in the emails as far as we know, so maybe that gives you a clue. It's all coming up on Slate Money. So I want to start this week by talking about 50-year mortgages, because this is the perfect overlapping of like personal finance and policy and all of the nerdy stuff that we love here on Slate Money. And if you go on the internet, which I would highly recommend you don't, it turns out that absolutely everyone has an opinion on 50-year mortgages. My opinion is the correct opinion, but
is it ever not, Felix?
But Elizabeth, but so far I have been very good. I have not shared my opinion on the internet. The listeners of Slate Money are hearing it here first.
Wow, breaking.
Yeah, breaking opinion right here. Elizabeth, before I tell you what the correct opinion is on 50-year mortgages, I want to know what your opinion is.
Well, first of all, thank you in advance for explaining to me what the correct opinion is.
You're welcome, Elizabeth.
So I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with 50-year mortgages, but I understand why people are enraged by the idea. Because just the idea that, you know, if you're available to, or if you're able to afford a house, like let's say when you're 20 or 25, which is increasingly not the case, the idea that you might die before you actually own it outright is horrifying to people. They don't want to be in debt forever. So I think a lot of the backlash is just, you know, the idea that it's just very difficult to own anything anymore, you know, and this not just houses, it's, you know, you have to pay for software on a subscription basis. Just the idea of being in debt forever, I think really horrifies people, even if it's a reasonable proposition overall. So tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is why people are horrified. I think they like we lost that battle decades ago.
The battle of forever debt?
The idea that a 30-year mortgage was something that you could or would go ahead and like buy a house with a 30-year mortgage, live in that house for 30 years, and then at the end of 30 years, you will have paid off your mortgage and you'll own the house outright. I'm sure there's still a handful of boomers out there for whom that is true, but very, very few. The median length of home ownership is about 7 years in the United States, which means that the overwhelming majority of houses that are bought with a mortgage are also sold with a mortgage. the idea of like just staying in your house and never moving and slowly paying it off over 30 years without ever even like refinancing is something that has always been just a tiny, maybe like 1 or 2% of homeowners have ever done that.
Also, the idea that old people don't have mortgage debt is not correct. Old people have mortgage debt, and that's a number that's been increasing a lot over the past few years. I was looking at an Urban Institute report last night. The share of homeowners 75 or older with mortgage debt, 30%. In 1995, it was 5%. And the debt it's like in the six figures for a lot of these people. So it's more common.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say this is not a bad thing. Having mortgage debt means two things. Number one, it means that they're more likely to have done the thing that we want older people to do, which is downsize when their kids leave the house and find themselves, get themselves like a more sort of suitably small apartment and leave the large house with multiple bedrooms for the families who need it. And then when you do that, when you sell your old place and buy a new place, it's perfectly reasonable to use a mortgage to buy the new place, in which case you are going to have mortgage debt. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
In the U.S., debt is really stigmatized, and the only kind of debt that isn't stigmatized is mortgage debt, because we've turned home ownership into kind of a value system. Anything else, including student loans, which are supposed to be a positive thing, are considered now markers of irresponsibility.
I don't know that many people who consider especially like undergrad student loans to be markers of irresponsibility, but maybe I'm just hanging out with like the financially sophisticated lot.
I think if you don't pay the debt, then you're irresponsible.
Yeah, if you default on the debt, then maybe you're irresponsible. But Emily, can you like just tell me why we're talking about this?
It's actually wonderful. Bill Pulte, the regulator of Fannie and Freddie, showed up at Mar-a-Lago with a poster, a 3 foot by 5 foot poster that had a picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt on it and a picture of Donald Trump on it. And under FDR was like 30-year mortgage, and under Donald Trump was 50-year mortgage, and it was like greatest presidents was the headline or something like that. Politico reported.
And 50 is bigger than 30, therefore it's better, right?
Yeah. So so Donald Trump saw it and was like, great. And on Truth Social was like, we're going to do 50-year mortgages. And then everyone hated it. Like MAGA hated it for the reasons that Elizabeth already said. Economists and hated it because they were like, this is just going to mean people pay more money in interest than they do in principal, and it's too long of a length of a term. Policy types hated it because they were like, we would need a law to make this happen, because the only reason we can have 30-year mortgages now is because Fannie and Freddie exist and they buy up all the mortgages and backstop them because banks don't want to make loans with ridiculously long terms, as far as I know. So they need a little bit of incentive, which is that they can sell the loans and get rid of them and make more loans.
For those of you who are watching on YouTube, that was indeed Emily gesticulating so much that she wound up bashing her microphone.
So anyways, no one liked this idea, really. So then I guess Politico also reporting that behind the scenes, the Trump administration, everyone's mad at Bill Pulte, who's done a lot of other shenanigans that we don't need to go into on this episode. But that, my friends, is why we're talking about 50-year mortgages. And since the poster board Mar-a-Lago situation, Donald Trump has then been on an interview with Laura Ingraham. Have I said her name right? Laura from Fox. Laura from Fox. She asked him about this, and he kind of like downplayed it. So it's probably not going to happen, but it's really fun to talk about.
And yeah, it's super. Just to like explain the role of Congress here. It's true that Bill Pulte at the FHFA does regulate Fannie and Freddie. But if Fannie and Freddie are going to buy a mortgage from a bank, it needs to be something called a conforming mortgage. And 50-year mortgages aren't conforming. And Bill Pulte, as the regulator, can't just wake up in the morning and decree that ipso facto 50-year mortgages are conforming. He needs an act of Congress to include 50-year mortgages among the group of conforming mortgages. And I think what people realized very quickly after Donald Trump raised this trial balloon was that there was really zero appetite within Congress for doing this. And that's interesting to me. And I think it speaks to exactly the kind of logic that Elizabeth was talking about. Like, there's just something there's something intuitively about 50-year mortgage, to use a technical term. People are just like, like, they don't want to create this kind of race to permanent indebtedness. What would happen if we had 50-year mortgages would be that people would use them, right? People always choose the mortgage that results in the lowest monthly payment they can find. And that's always the lowest, the longest mortgage. You know, unless there's some kind of steep yield curve and an adjustable rate, something, like, you know, it's, you know, we saw in the 2000s a few people doing the option arms and that kind of stuff because you got a better rate that way. But generally speaking, if you have, you know, a 30-year mortgage, that's going to be a lower monthly payment than a 15-year mortgage because you're paying it off over 30 years rather than 15 years. And people are like, great, lower monthly payment. And if there was a 50-year mortgage, you would get a lower monthly payment there too. But what that would do, and I think people intuitively understand this, is that people bid an amount for the house that they will be able to service in mortgage payments. And so if the mortgage payments go down because you have this newfangled mortgage, then what that does is it basically just means that house prices go up and the mortgage payments stay the same.
I think Trump doesn't understand this because he has always been comfortable with that. You know, he's built businesses on it. He's destroyed businesses on it. And
he's called himself the king of debt.
Yeah. I don't even think it registers with him why this would be disturbing to his own constituents.
I mean, I think it's fine. It doesn't solve any problems.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. It literally solves zero problems.
Yeah, it literally solves zero problems because just the scenario you just laid out, Felix, plus if it raises demand for homes, it would raise prices for homes. And as everyone has pointed out ad nauseum, the problem is there aren't enough affordable homes available to buy at the moment. So increasing demand without increasing, supply is going to raise prices.
If you want to make houses more affordable, build more houses. Don't faff around with mortgages.
But that's exactly what FDR, the other president on the poster board, did, right? He created conforming 30-year mortgages, which didn't exist before, opening up a completely new market. Heretofore, Americans bought houses using debt the loans that were shorter term that you had to pay off right away. Most people couldn't afford to buy houses at all. So he opened up the market with the 30-year loans, but then he also created all these programs to build and build and build and build tons and tons of houses. So that kind of working in tandem made a lot of sense. So if President Trump and his policy experts of which Bill Pulte is just one policy expert, of course. I'm sure there are more that they haven't fired. They could come up with, theoretically, a plan to unveil a 50-year mortgage in conjunction with like a huge construction push somehow, like a building big thing. Like that would be amazing and could actually be really interesting. But just like doing this on its own, probably not.
My favorite part of this story, though, is that there are people around Trump who are economists, who are policy experts, who probably present him with solutions to this problem every day. And Bill Pulte, in his twisted wisdom, was like, Trump is never going to read or think about these things, but I will crayon him a picture. And that will be the thing that gets through. And he's right. It does. Now I feel like everyone who wants to influence Trump is going to come in with a 3x5 board.
Elizabeth, do you have a theory of the case for why Bill Pulte is enamored of 50-year mortgages?
I think it's just he views it as probably a way of appearing to fix the problem without actually having to do anything that Republicans generally don't want to do, like build affordable housing.
I have theory of the case of the one sort of good reason why this is a bad idea, if that makes any sense. Like, there are bad reasons why this is a bad idea. Like, there was this quote from Mike Consul, who I love, who's very smart, but he's like, but it was all part of like, you couldn't underwrite a 50-year mortgage for a 45-year-old because they'd be like 95 when it matures and they'll be dead by then. It's like, no, that's not how mortgages work. The good reason why this is a bad idea is that for historical reasons, which are related to exactly what Emily was talking about with FDR, the 30-year mortgage has become the number one most popular forced savings vehicle in America. It is the way that people build up wealth. And you have to make your mortgage payment every month. And as part of that mortgage payment, you are paying down your principal and thereby buying equity in your home. And you are building a certain amount of savings in terms of home equity, little bit by little bit, month by month. And if you do that month in and month out for 30 years, eventually you wind up owning your home outright. And that is a relatively liquid asset that you can sell and have like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which you have just kind of magically accumulated over many, many years of just making housing payments, and that you wouldn't have accumulated had you been renting that house for the same amount. So that's like, it's like this wonderful little way of quietly being forced to save money. And the problem with 50-year mortgages is that they don't do that. If you have a 50-year mortgage and you make your monthly payments month in and month out for 30 years, at the end of the 30 years, the amount of equity that you've built up is tiny, assuming your house hasn't gone up much in value. Because in the first 25 years of that mortgage, it's basically all just interest payments. There's very, very little in the way of principal payments. And so what you're doing in terms of building home equity is you're relying entirely on home price appreciation. You're not relying at all on paying off your mortgage in order to build that wealth. And I am not a massive fan of the 30-year mortgage as a wealth building vehicle, but it is what we've got. It is the number one most popular wealth building vehicle in America. A lot of people pay off mortgages who don't save anything for retirement. And if you switch that to 50 years, then that part of American wealth building for the middle classes just goes away.
I think about that a lot, the wealth building of the home. It's like when I was doing my little Urban Institute reading about old people who have a lot of mortgage debt when they used to not have a lot of mortgage debt and that situation, there was some commentary about old people have a lot of wealth locked up in their homes, but they're kind of locked into those homes. Like they can't unlock the wealth without, you could refinance or you could take like a cash out loan or something like that.
Or you can move.
But the moving has become hard because home prices, I think they're up like 50-60% since COVID, and also rents are up. So like moving isn't as simple and like mobility isn't as free flowing as it should be right now in the US.
It's definitely true that the velocity of the housing market is down, but that's not because home prices are high. That's just because people feel locked into their mortgages. That if you have a 3% mortgage, which you got 10 years ago, and you're thinking about moving, then if you were to buy a house that was even cheaper than the one you're selling, your mortgage payments might go up because your mortgage is now going to be 6% rather than 3%. And this is this is entirely a function of mortgage rates having gone up. It's not really a function of people being old or house prices going up or anything like that.
That's true. But yeah, a lot of these old people have all this wealth, but it's kind of like they're kind of like cuffed into it because of the scenario, the rate lock scenario you just laid out, which is why I guess Pulte also was like, we're also going to do it's not just 50-year mortgages. We're also going to do portable and assumable mortgages, which is a cool idea. Assumable is someone buys your house and takes over your mortgage. So it gives more incentive and moves the theoretically gets the market moving again. And portable is you leave the house with your mortgage in a little suitcase with you so you can use it to buy another house, which I've not heard of that being a thing anywhere. Assumable is a thing.
They do exist. I think there's one country where they exist. They're obviously difficult to structure because when banks underwrite mortgages, they assume that you are going to move in 7 years on average.
Right.
And so like if mortgages become portable, then they know that's not going to be paid off if, mortgage rates go up. And so they're going to have to charge a higher rate for that portable mortgage than they would for a non-portable mortgage.
Even though they sell the mortgages?
Yeah, because they only sell them at market rate. But yeah, I think the fact is that no one really trusts financial wizardry as a solution to the housing problem. And it's probably not going to happen. But yeah, the kind of horror with which this proposal was greeted, especially on the right, has been really fascinating to me. And it's super interesting, especially in these, Epstein-soaked days that we're living through right now. That we are beginning to see the limits of Donald Trump wants this, so let's all get behind it.
I do think that that's largely a function of things being so much more expensive now. And, while I don't think that the Trump voters who said, we only care about inflation and that's why we're voting for Donald Trump, most of them were not being, honest about that entirely. But I do think that when people are struggling financially, that will cause backlash even among some of the more diehard supporters.
I was surprised that the Trump administration's floating all kinds of policies, all kinds of ways, all kinds of times. I guess for me, it was just a reminder of like mortgage and housing policy is actually interesting to normal, regular people.
People care about mortgages. They really do. Hey there! Before we get back to the show, I want to tell you about The Slatest, which is Slate's daily newsletter that lands in your inbox every evening. It's written by Slate's editor-in-chief, Hilary Fry, and it is the perfect way to end your day a little smarter than you began it. Every issue pulls together the sharpest stories, the most surprising news, and the can't-miss Slate podcasts, including this one, plus smart analysis and a bit of well-earned distraction. From DC to Hollywood to the algorithm, The Slatest keeps you clued in to the world and to Slate. You can sign up right now at slate.com/theslatest. We should move on. What's next, Emily?
Breaking. The Wall Street Journal is reporting, citing unnamed sources, that the FTC is looking into whether ISS and Glass Lewis, the shareholder proxy firms, are breaking antitrust law over how they advise clients on stuff, like woke stuff.
I love the story, and I do apologize to listeners for having an entire episode, or at least 2/3 of an episode, of vaporware, and we're talking about things that like haven't actually happened yet. We try to avoid that on this show, but this is also an interesting can of worms, which is that in principle, the way that public companies are governed is that shareholders. The board of directors of a company is answerable to shareholders, and then shareholders do votes on various things at various times, and that's the way that the owners of the company, the shareholders, can have some kind of control or accountability from the companies that they own. But because shareholders own such any given shareholder like you or me owns such a minuscule amount of the companies that we own, it just doesn't make any rational sense for us to spend the amount of time that would be necessary to spend working out how to vote on every single thing we're meant to vote on. And this is why individual shareholders famously, rationally, basically never vote on anything that isn't Elon Musk's share package and pay package. And it creates a gap in the market for like, well, so how are we, how do you vote these shares? And the way you wind up voting the shares in practice is that you hold your stock in some kind of an index fund or a mutual fund or a pension plan or something like that. And then the index fund or the mutual fund or the pension plan says, well, how do we vote? I don't know. Let's just ask these lovely friends of ours at Glass Lewis and ISS how to vote, and they'll tell us. And then they just do what they're told because they don't have the bandwidth to work out how to vote on all of these things either. And so what that does is it creates basically this duopoly of these two companies telling everyone how to vote, and the public companies don't like that, because if ISS and Glass Lewis suddenly wake up woke in the morning and decide they want, ESG something governance, then these two companies can basically make that happen, and they don't like that. And now it seems that they've managed to persuade the Trump administration that this is a bad thing.
I do not understand the antitrust case here, though. It's not like they have some kind of structural stranglehold on the market and that new entrants can't come in.
The antitrust case is just like, do you have a monopoly? And the answer is yes. If you have a duopoly, and they clearly do have a duopoly, then that's the end of the argument right there. Like, you do not need to prove that there are massive barriers to entry. You just need to show that there is a monopoly going on, and there is.
I wonder why, like we mentioned the woke thing, and I guess the White House doesn't like, and some Republicans doesn't like, ISS and Glass Lewis having opinions about climate change or gender equality or whatever. But I don't think that's why, that's not why Elon Musk necessarily doesn't like these firms. He doesn't like them because they recommend against giving him a raise, I would assume. And I don't know exactly why JP Morgan, why Jamie Dimon doesn't like these firms, but I find it hard to believe it has to do with ESG. I feel like it's got to be just more like, don't encroach upon me. Like, don't mess with my vibe. I'm running this company, not
They're
you.
just an accountability mechanism, and they would rather not have them.
And especially when it comes to executive pay, right? They are the one realistic break on ever spiraling executive pay, because every board of directors is like, we want to be above average in terms of how much we're paying our CEO. And if everyone wants to be above average, then every time there's a new CEO pay round, the median pay for CEOs just goes up and up and up. And the only way to prevent that from happening is for shareholders to step in and say, And, if you are the chairman and CEO of a $4 trillion bank, then you don't love it when a bunch of
commie shareholder
random
proxy
guys.
firms.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just like, it's like these anonymous people making nothing, who don't know anything about what it is to run a bank, think they know better than your board of directors how much you should be paid. Like, who are these people?
But as Matt Levine points out, they do serve a purpose, actually. Like BlackRock and I guess Vanguard, they can do their own proxy advising. Like, they can make their own recommendations and choices. They don't need them.
And BlackRock and Vanguard are so enormous that, they actually have the bandwidth to be able to make decisions individually on most of these things. And then Glass Lewis, interestingly, has said that as of 2027, it's not going to make recommendations, on how to vote, that you're going to have to pay it for a personalized set of recommendations, which I'm sure are going to be nearly always the same as, the other guy's personalized set of recommendations. But they are already moving away from this idea of all shareholders should just vote this way on this proxy.
Well, there was another firm, I think it was called, was it Broadreach? Or something like that.
Yeah, something like
they were
that.
Smaller, and their sort of workaround here was to say, we're not going to make overt recommendations. We're just going to give you all the research and infrastructure that will lead you to make your own conclusion.
Do your own research.
Which thanks, but no. That completely defeats the purpose. But this also, Elizabeth, speaks to exactly, your case that there are low barriers to entry, so they're not really a monopoly. It's hard. It's really hard to enter this market. There are thousands and thousands of public companies, and to enter this market, you actually need to put serious time and effort into doing real work on what all of the different votes are for every single company. And yeah, that's hard. And if your, attempted competitor is saying, well, we'll do some of the work and we'll share some of the work, but we're not going to tell you how to vote. Maybe you can just take our PDF file and plug it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will tell you how to vote. Like that, none of this helps,
You just have to write. I mean, Trump isn't alone. Like everything should be written on a 3x5 poster board. It would make everyone a lot smarter, probably. Let's just say.
Or dumber, but
whatever. But they'll know things.
It would be more efficient.
But the fact is that this is a war that the managers have already won. 99% of votes go the way that management want them to go. 99% of, board of directors nominations are unopposed. Companies can basically do whatever they want, and the amount of time that shareholders step up and say, well, no, here's a binding vote forcing you to do something that you don't want to do, that is rare as hen's teeth. It almost never happens. So what are we worried about? I mean, even Elon got his $1 trillion pay package.
Felix, help me with this example. There was an oil and gas company a few years ago, Exxon, that had a shareholder revolt of sorts, right?
Engine 11, something like that?
Yeah, they voted for, there was a vote and they put like these climate activist board members got nominated or actually were put on the board.
Yeah.
But then I was reading in the prep that Exxon now has like rejiggered the rules where they say to shareholders now, we will cast your votes for you. This
is also like the dumbest thing ever. They're saying like, yeah, if you want, we can just cast your vote for you and you automatically vote with management on everything. The fact is, for most individual investors, what they do is just not vote, which is effectively the same thing. The only time that you ever need individual investors to vote is for really out there corner cases like the Elon pay package, where you need like a certain percentage of votes, a certain number of votes in favor. It's not enough that the yes votes outnumber the no votes. You need like more than
filibuster
half of the
situation.
You need more than half of the shareholders to vote, and it's very hard to get small shareholders to vote. But yeah, no, this is a solution in search of a problem, to be honest. The other thing that has been happening is that in an attempt to, like the other companies that are in the crosshairs here are precisely Vanguard and BlackRock, who are holding shares on behalf of individuals, right? And so again, the Elon Musks and Jamie Dimons of the world are saying, like, it's not fair that when you're beneficial owners of these shares have a range of views on how the shares should be voted. It's not fair that you just wind up voting all of the shares in one way. This is like, it reminds me a little bit of like the Electoral College. They're basically saying if Texas votes 40% Democrat and 60% Republican, then it should send electors to the Electoral College where 40% of the electors are Democrat and 60% are Republican, rather than just saying, well, whoever won Texas, all of those electors wind up voting for the winner of Texas.
It kind of reminds me of arguments that people make against unions, where they're like, workers need more freedom. Like they can't be represented by a union because it's not good for them.
Because some workers want something else.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it's a canard. Is that a word?
It's a canard.
It's a canard. It's a way to argue against unions. It's the way management argues against unions by ostensibly like touting the individuality of workers. But what they're really doing is trying to like fragment their power so that they can't have any sway with management. And that's similar here, I think.
I'm just going to come out and say, though, that like I would much rather live in a world where the United States was a democracy and that the candidate who got the most votes became president, rather than this bizarre, dumb Electoral College thing, which makes no sense.
I think that's separate from shareholders and workers and things like that having sway with companies.
It's kind of similar, though.
It is similar, but
and one of the things that BlackRock and Vanguard have done to try and head off this argument is they've been like, well, if you want to vote your shares in a particular way, you can. It sounds good, but no one does it. So everyone realizes that this is like a very cheap thing for them to say because no one's going to take them up on the offer.
But someone needs to hold these companies accountable, right, Elizabeth?
Yes. There's also a sort of underlying assumption, I think, on the part of people like Dimon and Musk, that if, these companies didn't exist, or, BlackRock wasn't voting the shares of people whose money they have, that the shareholder decisions would be more favorable to them. And I think that's not necessarily the case.
Well, as Felix said, they're already so favorable. Like, geez, Louise, give it a rest.
You can't get more favorable.
Like, my God, can you be any more demanding and entitled? I'm just saying. No one specifically.
I feel like I need to interject here that if you're watching this on YouTube, Emily is color coordinated with the Slate office right now.
I didn't mean, yeah. We talked about me going up against the red background, but I thought I would be like Waldo, No,
it's good. And this is why we like the fact that we have the old Slate logo in the background, because it's the same color as Emily's shirt rather than the new all cap Slate logo. But we are getting very off topic here. We should move on to Elizabeth. What's the last thing we're talking about?
Oh, so good.
Robinhood and GoPuff. You can get cash delivered to your door now.
Just like you always wanted.
Sadly, not in a burlap bag with a big dollar symbol on it, but still.
I mean, I'm sure for like a modest extra fee, they'll do that. I love this because it's a couple of different things. Number one, Robinhood is just trying to like distinguish itself in various ways. And so they're like, if you have some kind of a direct debit situation where you're paying $1,000 a month or more into your Robinhood, and if you're paying us $5 a month for something called Robinhood Gold, then in return, we will give you the privilege of paying another $7 to get cash delivered to your house, which you will never do because no one in that world ever uses cash for anything. Like, this is, the median age of a Robinhood user is in their 20s or something.
I don't know. What if you need drugs, illegal drugs, to be delivered to your apartment?
This is a good point.
You need cash. You don't want to leave your apartment because you haven't ingested the drugs yet. Boom. Robinhood has filling a need.
No, I do like this because, your illegal weed delivery guy is coming in like an hour. So you now need your legal cash delivery guy to come in half an hour so that you're having the cash on hand to be able to pay for the illegal weed.
That's obviously the use case.
And also the name of the service is GoPuff. So it's right it's right there in the name.
Robinhood says that, for one thing, the drivers will be unaware that they're carrying cash. But how does that work? Normally with the GoPuff driver or somebody who does these delivery stuff, they go and pick up the goods at, let's say, the fast food store or the drugstore, whatever. Where are they picking up cash, and how do they not know it's cash?
They're picking up the cash in a sealed bag from the same place that they pick up the ramen or whatever else they're delivering.
They deliver some expensive stuff, apparently. It says $200 bottles of tequila.
This reminds me of Cosmo.com. Do you guys remember that?
Of course.
But the other thing that Robinhood is doing here, which we should just kind of explain, is that there is this rich people thing. If you are a private client of a very swanky private bank type situation, and you have personal service from your private banker, you can be sitting around at home and go oh, I need to, have some walking around money, and I am far too fabulous to try and remember my PIN at an ATM. So you just call up your personal banker and be like, can you drop off an envelope with a couple $1,000s with my doorman, and that way I will have money for, tipping people or whatever it is I need cash for. And that service you end up paying for in a million different ways, because probably you're paying, 1% of your assets in wealth management fees, and your assets are $100 million. So you're paying like $1 million a year to this bank. And so they're like, for $1 million a year, yeah, we can drop off some cash at with your doorman. That's fine. We will do that for you. And so what Robinhood is doing is it's creating this like facsimile of the kind of service that the very ultra rich people get. And it's like, hey, you get to live like a very ultra rich person, except for rather than having a private banker come to your door and drop it off, they're just getting like a GoPuff guy.
I have it in my notes. Ask Felix. Ask Felix, is this a thing for rich people? And I didn't have to. You answered it. So thank you so much. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I think this is a cool idea because it's annoying to get cash now. It used to be, I was, getting cash all the time before I paid for things with my phone, before cards were everywhere and everyone's paying not in cash all the time. But now it's so rare that I use cash that I don't recently I was at the hair salon and I had to tip in cash, or so I thought. And I was like, oh, fine. They have an ATM. It's not going to be a problem. I took out my debit card. I hadn't used it in so long. It expired. So I had no way of getting cash. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I had a panic attack. But it turned out Venmo was usable. So it wasn't actually a problem, but I like the idea. And sometimes, I live sort of in a remote-ish area. So going to the ATM, you often have to go out of your way to go to the ATM, which is annoying. So it would be good to have cash delivered.
I could see that, that sort of use case where if you have to get in your car and drive somewhere to get cash, that would be useful. But they're rolling it out in New York, where you can walk to the bodega in a pinch.
Yeah, but the bodega, they take that's where you get your number skimmed and everything. I feel like using ATMs now
Grandma.
It's like,
Emily, can I have the counterpoint? Can I put forward the counterpoint here? That your inability to tip your hairdresser in cash was a feature, not a bug, because otherwise, how would you have found out that your debit card had expired?
I would have found out some other inopportune time when I was really needing cash for some dumb thing.
After she paid off her 50-year mortgage.
I think it's broadly speaking a good thing to have a debit card that hasn't expired, and if you can use this as a way to remind you that your debit card is expired, then that's great.
But I barely need it anymore, You have the Venmo. Anyway, now I'm undercutting my own point. But my point is that it's nice to be able to get cash delivered to your house. Why not?
We should mention that there is another piece of vaporware proposal on the books that people who use their debit card to pay for things are going to be able to pay much lower rates at retailers than people who use credit cards. And in fact, that depending on what kind of credit card you have, you will pay more or less. If you have a platinum card, you'll pay more. If you have a regular cashback card, you might pay less. If you have a debit card, you'll pay even less. And that there will be a whole range of different prices that people pay at retailers depending on what kind of card they have. And all of this is legal now. Although, I think we've talked about enough vaporware for one.
We decided not to talk about this, so I don't know what you're doing right now.
All right, we're not talking about this. We're going to have a numbers round instead.
Cut off.
Emily, what's your number?
My number is 19.8. That's a percent. It's the average tip at bars at 2 a.m. And that is when tips peak at bars. At 8 p.m., tips are closer to the 16% range. And this data is for the second quarter of 2025. And it comes from Square. And the bottom line is the drunker you are, the more you tip.
I like it.
I guess that means that most people are happy drunks. And not
Yes, you become more generous. It's actually nice.
I become more generous when I'm drunk.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to save money, it's not cut out avocados, probably stop drinking so much or go home early from the bar.
My number is 20, which is also a percentage, which is very close to Emily's 19.8%. And 20% is the proportion of billionaires who own controlling stakes in sports teams. According to a new JP Morgan survey of like 511 billionaires. And I love the fact that people are doing surveys of 511 billionaires. 20% of them now own a controlling stake in the sports team, which is up from 6% in 2022. There's been a massive spike in billionaires buying sports teams. This is the new billionaire toy. It's much more popular than Frida Kahlo paintings or gold toilets or whatever the other yachts and planes and all of that kind of thing. Controlling stakes in sports.
Wow.
Yeah.
1 in 5 billionaires has a controlling stake in a sports team. That's amazing. I love that. Wow, good for them. That's what they should buy with their money. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't have an opinion.
If I gave you like a couple $1 billion right now, like how long do you think it would take you to buy a controlling stake in a sports team?
Infinite time. I would never, ever want a controlling stake in a sports team.
If you were to buy a controlling stake in a sports team, what would the sport be?
Football.
American football, like NFL?
Yeah, because it's the most fun. It has the least games. And it's most popular, most revenue generating, etc. Like you could make money probably. And like, if you own a controlling stake in like a baseball team, like, and do you feel pressure to go to all the games? It's like over 100 games. So football is more, tight.
Elizabeth, what's your number?
My number is 229, and that's $95, and that's how much you can now or soon pay for an Issey Miyake iPhone Pocket. And this is a collaboration between Issey Miyake and Apple that was started, or it sort of came up when Steve Jobs and Issey Miyake met and decided that they wanted to do something together, and it has never happened until now. But what an iPhone Pocket is...
Both of those men are now dead, I think.
Yes. What an iPhone Pocket is that it's like a sling just for your iPhone, which I feel like those things already exist, kind of, but it's sort of like the pointless in between your back pocket for your phone and an actual like purse.
It's like those Lululemon bags?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I see quite a lot of women in particular with their iPhones on like over-the-shoulder straps. That's like, yeah, because your purse might be too small to hold your phone, or you might, and you don't want to just throw it in the bottom of your tote bag. So I'm down with this.
I'm okay with it. Because if you put it in your pocket, it could fall out.
Tight jeans, they don't really have the kind of pockets that an iPhone fits comfortably into.
It seems like a lot of money, though. I feel like you get one for less money.
What happens if you're wearing a dress without pockets? They do exist still.
I don't know, Felix. What happens if you're wearing
you need an Issey Miyake iPhone holder.
Well, let us know when you get one, and you can give us a review.
All of my dresses have pockets, Elizabeth. I insist on that. Before I buy a dress, I always say, like, I won't buy this if it doesn't have pockets, and the pockets need to be big enough to fit an iPhone.
I think all items of clothing for women should have pockets. All dresses, all pants, all skirts. This is gender bias at its rawest, purest form, is the lack of pockets in women's clothes. We could have a whole episode on that.
Or fake let's pockets, do it. Which are doubly insulting.
Fake pockets. Pockets. What are you doing? What are you doing with fake pockets?
I will say that I have purchased men's suits that have fake pockets.
What? What? I'm surprised that you would do that, Felix.
I didn't realize
you were faked out.
If you have thoughts on pockets, send them to us. slatemoney@slate.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks to Jessamine Molly and Shana Roth for producing, and thanks for being a Slate Plus member. If you're a Slate Plus member, we have a Slate Plus this week, as every week. Stay tuned for that.
Tell them what's about.
What's it about, Emily?
It's about the Jeffrey Epstein email cache, but it's not what you think. It's about like a different angle on it that you maybe haven't heard before.
We have a whole new angle on Jeffrey Epstein's emails, which you will only find out about if you're a Slate Plus member. Otherwise, we'll be back next week with more Slate Money. And remember to check out the Slatest, Slate's daily newsletter. It's your daily update on the most urgent, surprising, and unusual news delivered straight to your inbox. A special thanks to all our Slate Plus members. If you haven't already, consider joining. Slate Plus members get unlimited access to all of Slate's journalism, plus they get ad-free podcasts, and they help support our independent reporting.